So the mark of the beast crisis has come to an end. Jesus returns on the clouds. There's a double harvest. Jesus comes to harvest his saints, those who have endured the final testing, persecution at this time in history, and those who have died. So he comes and he, with his sickle, harvests, reaps the wheat into his barn. But there's a double harvest. What happens to those who got the mark of the beast? Those connected with the wrath of God at this point in time. We have described the grape harvest. And now during this harvest, it's not Jesus. An angel is connected with it. But it looks like God is the direct active agent of violence for those who worship the beast. Let's look at the text. Revelation 14, 17 and 18. Then another angel came out of the temple. Another, not Jesus this time. Another angel came out of the temple in heaven, and he too had a sharp sickle. Second harvest. And another angel then came out from the altar, the angel who has authority over fire, and he called out with a loud voice to the one who had the sharp sickle. The second one. Put in your sickle and gather the clusters from the vine of the earth, for its grapes are ripe. A second harvest. Grapes. The word reap is not there. There are two harvests. The grapes are ripe. Jesus harvested the wheat into his barn. And now we've got another harvest that's not that good. It's the grape harvest. The grapes are ripe. The grapes are the lost. And they will experience the winepress of the wrath of God. Not a good one. Let's have a look at it. Revelation 14, 19. So the angel swung his sickle across the earth and gathered the grape harvest of the earth, and he threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of God. Here we go. God ends up violent after all. Not so quickly. It looks like, at a surface level, that God is a direct active agent of violence. But what else can this phrase mean? Folks, the clue is in the phrase, wrath of God. We've already seen a number of times that the wrath of God does not describe divine violence, but violence that comes where there is divine absence, withdrawal. John has already defined this term, and we are supposed to bring his understanding of this term into this storyline. The wrath of God describes when God no longer restrains evil, but lets go, and then evil runs its course. Bring that meaning into the text. Not divine violence, but divine withdrawal of protective presence. Then it means something else. God is not doing anything. This is describing the way evil now collapses in on itself. Let's have a look at it again. Let me just read this statement out. Throughout this teaching series, we've seen that the wrath of God in Revelation never refers to divine violence. It consistently refers to divine withdrawal, God ceasing to restrain evil. Let's go. When God withdraws, evil implodes under its own weight. The wrath of God is the divine decision to let evil run its course. Now that we know that that's what the wrath of God means, let's replace wrath of God with what it means. God withdraws and ceases to restrain evil. Now it says something else. If wrath in Revelation doesn't mean divine violence, but divine absence, as we saw in Deuteronomy 31, as we saw with Babylon, we've seen this. If that's what it means, divine absence through divine withdrawal of protecting power, restraining power. If wrath in Revelation doesn't mean divine violence, but divine absence, then the winepress represents What happens when God no longer restrains the destructive forces of evil? He lets go of the winepress, and the wrath of God means absence, and the winepress comes in. Look, since wrath means destruction that comes through divine absence, then the winepress of the wrath of God means the winepress of divine absence. Since God's wrath means divine absence, then the text is saying this is the winepress of divine absence. God is holding back the winepress, and when he lets go, it's the winepress of divine absence. He restrains, he lets go of restraint, and the winepress squeezes the grapes. Because God's wrath is manifested, he's let go. And so nothing's holding it back anymore. This is talking about judgment at the second coming of Christ. That is direct consequences that we create. God lets go, he lets evil play out, and the winepress of the wrath of God means the winepress of divine absence. And God's not doing the squeezing, folks. Squeezing takes place when God withdraws his restraining presence on the powers of darkness, and the winepress was being held by God. Evil runs its course and destroys itself. It comes in on its own head, as we've clearly already seen in the trumpets, and we will see in the plagues. But what about, say, okay, wrath of God means divine absence, yeah? Withdrawal. The winepress of divine withdrawal. The winepress of withdrawal, let's go, bang, and it comes in. We need to understand the phrase wrath of God the way John has used it. It doesn't mean God's presently, actively doing anything. It's him withdrawing and letting go in the winepress. He's holding the winepress, and all of a sudden, let's go. Your own consequences. Evil will destroy the grapes. Evil will squash the grapes. Still a bloody image, eh? But what about this? That the blood reached a horse's bridle for 1,600 stadia. 1,600 stadia. That's how much blood came out. Blood doesn't come out from grapes. Grape juice does. So we know that the grape juice represents the blood. They shed blood, and now evil will shed its own blood. They shed blood, and now evil will shed its own blood. Why 1,600 stadia to the depth of a horse's bridle? The numbers are symbolic, as we know from 1:1. What is 1,600 symbolic of? 40 times 40 is 1,600. 40 is the number that symbolizes testing. Flood, 40 days. Israel wandered in the wilderness, 40 years. Jesus was tested by the devil, 40 days. 40 times 40 is 40 squared. 1,600 represents the final, complete testing of the lost. 14:18. And one other thing. Put in your sickle and gather the clusters from the vine of the earth, for its grapes are ripe. The grapes are the lost. They experience the winepress of the wrath of God, a divine absence. So the grapes are the lost. And evil is going to squish them and do to them, shed their blood the way they shed the blood of the saints. The grapes are ripe. Evil has come to its full maturity. And God lets go of the winepress, divine absence, divine withdrawal, and now evil destroys evil and fully runs its course when Jesus returns. The final judgment when Jesus returns is not an act of direct active violence on the part of God. It is the self-inflicted judgment of those who are ripe in rebellion. We're now up to the 7 last plagues.